Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to this webinar. It's the webinar of digitalization in social services, opportunities and barriers for people with disability. I hope you'll have a good day and will be enjoying this webinar the whole day. And for issues of technical support or technical issues, I will lend the microphone to Lasse, who will guide us through the technical stuff. So, Lasse, welcome.
Thank you. Just some technical issues. I'm sure you will understand them quite easy. So if you have any questions, ask them through the chat function throughout the seminar. And then if you want to have text and need to see that, activate closed caption for the written interpretation. You click on CC, which means closed caption, and there's an arrow next to it where you can even set and hide subtitles if you want to. So check that out, and if you have any questions through that, just ask them and I will help you during the seminar. This will be recorded, and if you have any, again, technical challenges, please write it in the chat and I will answer it as good as I can. And please turn on in your right upper corner, you have a view where you can have gallery view or speaker's view. Please turn it to speaker's view and you will have the speaker in the full picture, and that will be a bit better for you during the day. So back to you, Max.
Yes, thank you, Lasse. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Max Peter Jensen from the National Board of Social Services, and I have a presentation later on where I'll give a brief presentation of the work I'm doing in the National Board. But now I'll give the microphone to Brian, who is also from the National Board of Social Services. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you, Max. Hello, my name is Brian Skov Nielsen, and I'm the leader of Adult Disabilities and Welfare Tech at the National Board of Social Services in Denmark. As all of you know, the United Nations has formulated 17 goals for sustainable development in the world. Today, we focus on goal number 10.2, which addresses social, economic, and political inclusion for everyone. And here we will focus on the role of digitalization in social services and the implications for people with disabilities. The right to be included and to have equal opportunities to participate is also part of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Digitalization is a highly current theme in society in general. The potential is huge, but we are entering uncharted territory here, and we need to proceed with caution. The purpose of today is to discuss the theme across the Nordic borders, exchange knowledge and ideas, and to provide our collective input on the theme to the Nordic Council of Ministers. The National Board of Social Services is a government agency under the Ministry of Social Affairs and the Interior. Our aim is to contribute to a knowledge-based social policy which furthers effective social initiatives to the benefits of the citizens. Part of our work focuses on people with disabilities. In this work, we see that welfare technology, digital or otherwise, play an important role in social services and are most likely here to stay. At Center for Disabilities, we believe it is important to focus on digitalization of social services. This is an area with great development in these years, but we need to be smart and to have an eye both for potentials of the digital solutions and to the challenges they might pose to people with disabilities and their participants in society. And we need to further invite the users to participate in the design process and to give feedback during the testing of the digital solutions. Today's program will address all this and hopefully expand our common awareness of the possibilities as well as the barriers in digitalization of social services and how this concerns the goals of inclusion and participation for people with disabilities. Back to you, Max.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you for the introduction for the topic for the day and this webinar. And this is a part of a project from NVC, and I'll give the microphone to you, Lars. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Lars Lindberg, and I will start now this films. My name is Lars Lindberg, and I work at the Nordic Welfare Center, which is the co-host for this seminar together with Socialstyrelsen. And Nordic Welfare Center is an institution under the Nordic Council of Ministers, and with office in both in Helsinki and in Stockholm. We work with a mission to contribute to the development of welfare initiatives in the Nordic region by compiling, disseminating knowledge on welfare issues. And we also enable different expert meetings like this to convey knowledge, establish network, and produce best practice recommendation for decision makers. We also build bridges between research and practice. And we also have different kind of target group, audience, politicians, decision making, researchers, and non-governmental organizations. And the work we do is we have arranged seminars, conferences, publications, we network and disseminating and marketing. And our results also basis for political decisions in all Nordic countries. We have four focus areas: welfare policy, integration, and public health, and disability issues. Regarding disability issues, the basis is UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities, and also the Council of the Nordic Cooperation on Disability. And we also educate staff on the work with deafblind persons. There are three main tools for Nordic cooperation on disability, and one of them is the action plan. The action plan is divided in three different focus areas: human rights, sustainable development, and freedom of movement. And this project that arranged this seminar is the part of the sustainable development. And the project is named Universal Design, Inclusion, and Democracy. When we talk about the Agenda 2030, as we have mentioned, there are different goals that also include disabilities, and people with disabilities or disabilities are mentioned 11 times. And the main focus here is leave no behind goal. And the project that we have here aim to have experience and knowledge exchange related to different targets. And all of these seminars we are arranging are the multi-stakeholder dialogue meeting that will be coordinated by national agencies in the different regions. So Socialstyrelsen in Denmark is one of them. And all these meetings and webinars we are arranging aim to map different good example, best practice, indicators, and how to implement the agenda in the Nordic region. This webinar is a part of a series of webinars. We have arranged two meetings, one about young people and inclusion. The second one was about active enrollment. We will arrange two other webinars this autumn, smart cities, that will be arranged by Bufdir in Norway. Smart cities are universal design cities. And the last one is why are there so few politicians with disability in the Nordic region? That is arranged now. It is 17th, not 7th. If you have any questions, you can mail me. Thank you.
Thank you, Lars. And if you have any question in this webinar, you can use the chat. We will now be seeing the first main presenter, the keynote from which is Stefan Johansson, PhD in human-computer interaction from Begripsam in Sweden. I think you will introduce yourself a bit more. So welcome to you, Stefan.
Thank you, Max. Yes, my name is Stefan Johansson, and I will give a speech about participation and participation in the digital society. That's my main area of research. And I often work with people with disabilities, but also with homeless people. So people struggling in participation in the digital society, you can say. And I have done some thinking about what is the prerequisites for participation actually. What is, if we sort of divide participation into different pieces, what is it that build up a participation for a citizen in a Nordic country or in any country perhaps. And my point on this is that if we design for participation, then inclusion will be a result. So I look at inclusion as an outcome, and nothing that you can sort of plan for. That's something that happens if you do the other things right. Then people feel included. And actually, we have measures on inclusion in the digital society that we can go back in time and see how people feel about inclusion in the digital society. I will return to that in a moment. So I am a PhD in human-computer interaction, and I work at a place called Begripsam, but I'm also connected to the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm, and very much of the things I present today. If you want further reading, you can read my thesis about this, and we also have a new article on the disability digital divide recently published. We are doing some nice surveys on that in Sweden. So there is a lot of further reading for you who want to dig deeper into this topic. Yeah. So and the main thing, the main thing I'm discussing is that we sort of can make the digital society more easily accessible, more easily usable. And those people who can inform us the best about that is the people who struggles to use it. So that's a sort of starting point for me, and also for my group. The Begripsam group is a bunch of people, all lived experience of disability, mostly cognitive disabilities. So we have a lot of experience in the group. We are about 30 people in the Begripsam group, and we try to help others to understand what can they do to sort of simplify their digital solutions. So we take part in different kind of projects and try to support people who wants to understand this topic further. And and we collaborate a lot with other stakeholders and other parties that want to sort of improve their knowledge. So we think we can sort of contribute with understanding, and understanding comes from having lived experience of the problem that you're talking about. So this is part of the group, and we are examining a service from, I think it was from the tax authority in Sweden, so how to pay your taxes. To start with, maybe some positioning here. I regarded disability as primarily a social construction. Of course, there is some kind of impairment involved, but I think that the problem that people encounter are mainly caused by society, by how we design society, and design. I regard design, almost everything is designed in society. We have constructed it. Someone has sort of planned it and figured it out how it should be, and then we have constructed it, and now we are living with it. And poor design actually result in disability, and poor design sort of affect all of us when we try to use something that someone has designed. So that's a very broad definition of design. Everything actually is designed, according to me. Also, laws, rules, regulations, they are designed by someone, and they can contribute to participation, or they can prevent participation. So that means that design is never a neutral thing. You can either go one way or the other, and a design process, you can divide a design process into thousands of small decisions. It's actually, when you take a close look at the design process, there are decisions going on every time and everywhere. And each and one of those decisions could either sort of bring us closer to a more universally designed society, or it could take us further away. So the designer, in my view, has a lot of power, a lot of possibilities to make things better or make things worse. And I haven't actually met a designer that deliberately wants to make things worse. But when you look at the result of a design process, you can often find things that actually make things worse. And that's, I think that's a result of lack of knowledge. Not that they wanted that to be the result. I don't think they want. The designers want to do good, most of them. You can find some examples of deceiving design that is intended to fool us and trick us, but most designers are honest and want to do a good job. But anyhow, you can find mistakes in the design that makes participation harder for people. And this is perhaps a difficult picture to grasp in a short moment, but that's how we think in Begripsam, and then in the research team I'm working with. We are doing action research, and we want empowerment in the public. The people participating should be empowered during participating in the process, and the process is twofolded. We want to change something. We are sort of critical about something in the world as it is, and as a researcher we want to create new knowledge. That's the idea behind the research process. But in the society we want to achieve societal change. So we want to sort of have a dual agenda in our project. So the project is aiming to both create new knowledge and to change something in society simultaneously. And a third process is also going on, and that's the personal project. So that the persons involved should also sort of get something out from participating in the project. So this is sort of a model that we are using to sort things out. What is connected to the scientific process here? What is knowledge production, and what is more of an activist parts that we want to change the society at the same time. And then people in it also should grow in some sense, participating. And that will result in some change. And then we sort of visualize that with the new world as it could be by design. Design is our tool to create a new world. And on the way, we often use sort of future presentations. We do prototyping, for example, and a prototype is a description of a future that could be. And if we decide to go in that direction, we can construct something according to the prototype, but we can also discuss the new society, the new thing, by discussing prototypes. So that's a method we often use. Let's think a bit about this. Is it possible to stay out digitalization? You can see that when we do surveys on population in the Nordic country, we will find that some parts of the population still says that I am not in the digital world, and some say I don't want to be there. Others say I want to be there, but I cannot. And I think in Sweden I think the current survey said that about 10% of the population is not yet digitalized, but that is not the same as you are not affected by digitalization. For example, in some parts of Sweden, you must be able to identify yourself digitally to take a COVID test. And we have a lot of people in our service when we sort of ask people with disabilities saying, I cannot do that. I don't have any mean to identify myself digitally. And that means also that I can't take a COVID test in that region of Sweden for the moment, because they have sort of mandated taking the test with that you have to be able to identify yourself digitally. So my point is that you can't really stay outside digitalization, even if you say I'm not there. You are heavily affected by digitalization as the society sort of grow into a digital society. And that was the idea behind the internet, was actually very universal from the first place. This is sort of the inventor of internet, or one of the persons who we think actually invented the whole thing, Tim Berners-Lee. And he immediately realized the sort of potential in the web, saying that access by everyone, regardless of disability, is an essential aspect. So from the very beginning, he noted the universal potential of the internet, and has kept doing that all the way through. He still argues that the universal aspect of the internet is sort of the thing with it. And the question is then, is it universally accessible? If we take a look at it, how does participation in this world actually work? That is what I am sort of investigating in my research. And for doing that, I think after some years of thinking, I have sort of ended up with a kind of framework, and I will present this framework today to you. So I used an analytical model to sort of sort things out, and I will go through those more in detail in a minute. I have a toolbox of methods that I can use. We need to sort of work with accessibility and universal design. We need some kind of guidelines, but we also, I think, need some kind of ethics involved, ethical guidelines, and we also need statistics. We need to know what is working and what is not, and who is online and who is not, and what is people doing online. And when we take a closer look at statistics in every Nordic countries, I think we don't have statistics on how people with different impairments actually are using the internet, because those populations is not visible in the whole population service that we do. So there is sort of a huge lack of knowledge, actually, what are those parts of the population really doing on the internet, or are they doing on the internet or not? And this, by working with this different kind of parts in the frameworks, we can say something about the prerequisites of participation. So that will be my last part of the presentation. And for me, the central unit of analysis is often cognitive accessibility or accessibility. We sort of put that in the center, and then we can discuss other things in society in relation. In some work, I have put homeless people as the central unit of analysis, or smartphone. So you can sort of change the unit of analysis when your interest of research shifts, and that makes it possible to look at different parts of society. We need an infrastructure to be digital. We need broadband. We need devices. And that could be the problem for some people. They don't have those kind of things, and then they can't be on the internet, of course. And society has paid a lot of attention trying to sort of build usable and good broadbands, and also we have seen a lot of infrastructure device development during the years. But it could be regarded as too expensive for someone, for example, or too difficult to use, or you are living in an area where you can't connect, or that could be the problem. But also often the problem is on the left side in the model, where you can see that we haven't a good policy on this. So maybe the policy is preventing participation. For example, the social insurance system is not really updated to be regarding people as digital society. I think we still regard people as not being part of the digital society, and then the social services work accordingly. And that could mean that we have problems on the practice level. For example, in the special schools in Sweden, people with intellectual disability, we don't prepare the students to be digital citizens. They leave school without the knowledge, and sort of we haven't organized our education for that group. And then we are on the activity level. And the activity level is often the most studied level in accessibility. We sort of look at how does exactly this thing work for exactly this person. Can a blind person pay their taxes in Sweden? That's a typical accessibility question. And we sort of focus on the activity as such. And that is still relevant and still useful, but also tends to be perhaps too much on the individual level. We look at this person and we say, oh, sorry, this person can't work because we don't have any accessible systems that work. But maybe a change in practice could solve that. We can't change the person. He or she has the kind of problems and issues they have. So we have to, if we want to make change, we might focus on other parts of this. So this is the analytical model, and I have found it useful to sort my findings out and to see who to blame when things not working. Also, when you work with design, you need to contemplate a bit over who has the power to decide what is going to be designed. Well, it's not the designer actually. It's often the people handling the money, or the people who can decide on projects or on programs or things. They divide the resources in a specific direction. Those are the ones with the most power. And then we can often see that we have a technical perspective saying, well, this can't be done, or this is forbidden, or you must do it this way. Often also heavily engaged with security, and security is often conflicting with accessibility, because because they don't really understand the accessibility issues. So we introduce security measures, and that will make things difficult to use. And actually, some security perspective can't divide from what is a person and what is a robot. So we have this kind of problems in accessibility as well. And then we have the domain perspective. I'm now, for the moment, I'm working on health and e-health, and we have a lot of ideas coming from the domain perspective of they say that they work user-centered, they have the patient in center, but when we start to analyze what is going on, we can see that they don't have the patient in the center. They have their own their own organization and their own services and their own way of thinking in center, and then to some parts they let the user or the patient in. So the weakest partners in a design process is the user and the designer, and those are the one actively engaged often in design. If we have a user-centered design process, then we have the users in the project, but the project is often already restricted too hard, so you can't say that you have power or influence. You can sort of work with very limited frame of what can be designed and what can be done in this specific project. So the real power figures is the one sort of at the top of the hill. And this illustration is from a game in Sweden called Herre på Täppan. Someone is the top dog at the top of the hill, and that's often the fat guy with the money. And something that I said, that designers are not they don't want to do bad design, but sometimes they do anyhow, and I call that toppling counter forces. You can find something in the design that doesn't bring us closer to the intended goal, and this is a visualization of a process we worked with for a couple of years ago. Homeless people should get a home. Could we design a system to help homeless people to get a home? Yes, everybody agreed that's a good idea, that's what we want, and we start a process to achieve that goal. But then when we take a closer look, there are counter forces in that process. That could be very long time between meetings, for example. That doesn't bring a homeless people closer to get a home. Or if meetings are missed due to poor information about meetings, for example, a very large extent of meetings in this process is actually cancelled with short notice. One homeless people could have 200 meetings with different kind of representatives from society per year. And the norm for support for homeless people doesn't include them having a smartphone. And when providing homeless people with smartphones, we could see that resulted in a lot of positive things that could bring homeless people closer to get a home. But the norm doesn't allow that, and they don't have systems for delivering smartphones to homeless people. It is sort of a fast return of its investment giving homeless people a smartphone, but the system doesn't allow it. There is a constant shift of staff and no coordination between us. Actually, we could find a lot of things going in the wrong direction in this sort of overall process, and we call that toppling counter forces. And you can train people to look for them. So even today, when I meet some of the homeless people that participated in that project, they say, "Oh, Stefan, I have identified an arrow going in the wrong direction." So they still think about toppling counter forces. That's a strong metaphor that can be used to sort of empower people to look at flaws in the design that someone has put there, not intentionally, but it is there, and it's causing a lot of problem. And actually, they have also proven very hard to change. even when we notice that this is the problem, it's really hard to change. So if I meet the same person that said, I am called to 200 meetings per year, and that's a problem. And 2 years later, he still is called to 200 meetings per year, even though everybody involved in the process sort of realized that this is a problem. We shouldn't probably do that to a homeless person, just called to that many meetings. And the solution from the society is often to introduce another instance in society that starts to call everybody to meetings to coordinate, but the number of meetings doesn't go down. So they are sort of resilient. The counter forces are really difficult to get rid of. This is a picture inspired by Rosemary Garland Thompson. She was the one who introduced the concept of a normat. A normat is a person that doesn't have to explain him or herself. A person that takes everything for granted. For example, a white middle-aged male like me, I'm a normat. I don't have to explain myself too much. I can just take place and start talking. Other people has to explain themselves or sort of claim a position, and Rosemary Garland Thompson later called those people the misfits, the one that doesn't fit in society. And I found this sort of discussion useful in understanding why is design often going wrong, and it is, I believe, it is that designers are trained to focus on the normats or the nearly normats. They can sort of think of that people are a bit diverse, not too diverse, because that's a problem. And if we start a design process from the normats and out to the misfits, then every sort of move outwards in this circle will cause problems in the design process, because you will realize that, oh, we have missed the requirements from this group, and now we try to add it to our design, but the budget is already sort of gone. We can't change that much. We will have to come back to that later, they often say. And that's the main reason why we introduce new design that is poorly sort of adapted to the requirements of the people in the white field in this circle, the misfits. But our idea in Begripsam is that if we start with that perspective, the extreme perspective of the people that are very different from other, and if the designers understand what those people say, and then they will design something that works for those people, then everybody, when we are moving into the circle and sort of finally reaching the normats, everybody in that part of the circle will think that the solution is working and is good. So that's one of the main ideas that we are trying to sort of inform designers of, that they should shift the direction of thought. They have sort of been trained to adapt a wrong direction of thought, so that they should start with sort of an image of the majority, perhaps, and design for them, and then add other groups on as they go along. But actually, it works better if they shift totally and start to design for those who have sort of the biggest issues in using the thing. If they are satisfied, everybody else will be satisfied. Moving to my toolbox, what you need some kind of methods to work with this kind of issues, and there is a lot of methods, so you can probably find a lot more of methods than I will present here that also will work. But we often use participatory methods. We try to do this together, and that is sort of a strong demand currently, that research or projects should be carried out with participants, and in this case, participants with different kind of impairments. But we also combine them with emancipatory methods. We think that by taking part, you should be strengthened as an individual. That's also important. So So we don't do that much of user testing, for example. That could be regarded as participatory, but not very emancipatory. You come in a room and you test something that someone else has designed, and then you go away and the designer makes the conclusions and do the analysis. So we try to sort of adapt and use other methods where people can have a say equally as the designers, and hopefully also equally with all the other stakeholders in the design process. And then you need to have some methods for co-creation and collaboration. You work together. You need methods to sort of that allows for that. And when you look at many design processes today, commercial design process, they don't allow for real co-creation because they don't have the time to do that. The projects are too slim to have real co-creation in it. So they maybe have some kind of initial workshops, but they don't sort of follow this up through the whole design process. And that's because they often have too small budgets to do that. And nowadays you have to adapt to an online world. So you need methods that work both online and in physical spaces. Much of this work were done in physical spaces. Even though we work with digital solutions, we didn't use digital tools to collaborate. We collaborated in physical spaces and draw things on whiteboards and papers. But now we had to shift all that, and we have. So all our design teams and groups are working online at the moment, and we have sort of managed to do that, to shift to an online collaboration environment. We often use something called value-sensitive design to work with the tensions that could be in a design, and to make tensions sort of visible. We think that every stakeholder in the design process bring different kind of norms and values to the table. And if they are unaddressed, they will end up in the final design of the product or the system or the service. So if you can make them sort of visible in the beginning of the project, you can discuss them, and you can either solve them or either realize that this will be a remaining conflict in the final design. People, for example, want to speak with healthcare people in the evenings or nights when they don't work, but those people don't want to work nights, so they sort of limit the time when we can talk to them, and that's a conflict that we probably have to live with, and that's easier to do if you recognize it and try to deal with it during the design process, than realize that this is a conflict that we haven't addressed before, when you release your sort of perhaps your e-health service or something like that. And we use this extreme user perspective, we call it that. So we have people with very tough demands on design, maybe the toughest demands that you can find. So that's the extreme in this. We want the design to work really well for us, where other people might accept poor design because they can sort of deal with it. We have people in our groups that can't stand poor design. They are oversensitive for poor design, if you put it that way. So that means that they will recognize poor design really quick, and that is what makes them useful in a design process, because then you can identify poor design early on in the process, and you can perhaps do something about it before the release of the final product or service. To do this, previous research said that people with cognitive impairments, they can't be in collaborative spaces. You can actually find publications saying that. It is really, really difficult to work with people, and then they can sort of exemplify this with people with different kind of diagnoses and stuff. So it was sort of said that this is really difficult people to work with, and you have to think carefully if you want to bring them into your design process. What I think that I have realized is that it wasn't really the the people that was the problem, or the method used, because that was often a result in that kind of research. People said, we need to find new methods to work with those strange people with autism or intellectual disability or whatever. But what we have found is that if you sort of carefully arrange the setting around an activity, then you can use the old methods they actually use. They are in use and they work. But you have to pay very, very close attention to how to structure it, how to plan it, how to inform people about it, how to organize, and all that stuff. And we call that scaffolding. That's a term from, well, it's a term from the building industry, but also from school. Pedagogues use scaffolding to discuss how they arrange for students to reach their goals. So not the learning in itself, but the sort of the thing around the learning. And we see the same thing, that how you arrange your activities actually is what's sort of make people participate or not. So and you have to pay attention on a lot of things. Then you can use almost any methods, any design method actually seems to work. And we use a convivial atmosphere, and maybe convivial is an unfamiliar word for you, and it was to us also, but we realized that we actually have practiced conviviality, and if you want to read more about that, I have a reference to a book by Skov and Tiro explaining this term, but it's sort of an here and now process. You pay close attention to each other and what is going on in the room, and you try to establish a feeling of trust and openness, so that you don't have to defend yourself, and that it's really difficult because we are working with the designers or the people who has ordered poor design, and we try to tell them that, sorry guys, but you have done poor design, but we try to tell them that in a way that we still can collaborate and we are still friends and they like us and they want to hear more about their poor design. And that's sort of the thing here, to make the atmosphere open and that you don't have the need to defend anything. And then we create ourselves and our fellow beings in that conversation. So that's conviviality. We try to apply it every time we can. They say it's closely related to love, but also the feeling of being close, having a nice time. Hygge, I think you would say in Danish. It's close to conviviality. Over to the guidelines then. You need guidelines because it doesn't come naturally how to design a society that will sort of include people with very, very diverse needs. So we need some kind of guidelines for doing that. And we do we need a lot of theoretical guidelines here. As I said, we use action research as some kind of guideline on how to do it. We have guidelines on participation. We have guidelines on activity. Activity is still very important. It is in the activity that you sort of can say, could I use this or could I not? Could I participate or could I not? It's in the activity. So accessibility is often situated in an activity. If I can't take part of this presentation, then the activity sort of become pointless. We have guidelines on practices, and the theoretical model I showed you with the cognitive accessibility in the middle, that is inspired from theories on how practices sort of emerge, evolve, and die away. And practices is really hard to change. It's easier to change people than practices. So in many organizations, the real challenge is to change the practice. And you can see that when you study digitalization, that we sometimes can't change the old practice. The old practice is still there, and we sort of sort of put the digital stuff on it, not changing the way that we did, and that might not help the sort of fulfilling the promise that lies in digitalization. We need theoretical guidelines on accessibility and also on universal design, and we need to understand disability. When I say that disability is mostly a social construct, others might say against that. So there are different models on how disability is created in society, and you sort of need to work with them and understand them to explain what is going on. And also you need practical guidelines. And for digital content, we have the web content accessibility guidelines that are sort of in focus at the moment, because at the European level we have a new legislation that sort of demands public services to adapt to this guideline. We have a totally new guideline on cognitive accessibility that I have been working with, and that's because the web content accessibility guidelines actually are quite weak on cognitive impairments. The web content accessibility guidelines, they protect people with low vision and hearing and motor impairments, basically, mostly, and they are poor on protecting people with cognitive impairments, and it has found difficult to implement that kind of requirements in the guideline. So now we have a standalone guideline for cognitive accessibility, the ISO 21801, part 1 on cognitive accessibility, general guidelines on that. And those are very broad. They can be applied on everything. So we need sort of a transfer into the digital world, and we are working with that in a project called DigiCog for the moment. So we use this ISO guideline and we produce guidelines more sort of adapted to a digital setting, so that they can be used widely to sort of address also cognitive accessibility in digital interfaces. Yeah, I will shift to ethics now, and this is a quote by Bruno Latour. This sort of, when I say design very broad, and others has also regarded design very broad, then Latour says, by expanding design so that it's relevant everywhere, designers take up the mantle of morality as well. And what I think that sort of Latour is saying here, that if design is so important in society, and if everything is designed, designer must think of moral. What is the right thing to do as a designer? You can't just design stuff and put it into the world. You have to think about how will this design affect the world, and basically we can see that we have designed ourselves into a climate crisis, and maybe we can design ourselves out of that crisis as well. We don't know, but we have certainly designed ourselves into that crisis, and that is what happens if designers don't think about moral and have a moral in their work. And you can say that the convention is an ethical guideline, is the most important ethical guideline for working with issues regarding accessibility and a universal design, and making it possible for people with different kind of impairments or disabilities, as they call it in the convention, if they are going to live a life that is sort of fulfilling their sort of potential, then we need to have ethical guidelines. But also the universal design principles could work as guidelines, and we have presented our own ethical framework in Begripsam. We have discussed ethics a lot during the years that we have worked, and sort of ended up with some practical guidelines. So we say, act in the spirit of conviviality. That's sort of our main approach. We want to be friendly. We want to change the world, but we want to be friendly, and we want to collaborate with others to do that. And close to that, we say act in the spirit of solidarity. So we think solidarity is an important thing. We want to cater for citizenship and democracy, but we also say be pragmatic about it. We don't work dogmatically. We are practical people. Often we find it strange that people, when people sort of behave according to the difficulties, then people get surprised. So if you can't fill in the form to the social service agency in Sweden, you don't get the support that you are sort of allowed when you have the diagnosis, saying that you can't fill in forms. And people get surprised about that. So, and they shouldn't. We think that mainstream solutions is better than special solutions. If possible, you should go for the mainstream, and that's an advice that we give to designers. Don't design anything special if you can design something universal. But special things still might be needed because we can't, or we don't know how to design the universal. We want designers to go in directions that help people to take control over their lives, and to let people grow or let people be just as they are. So don't try to change people. Try to change the world around people. But if people want to grow, then they should be allowed to do that. And that's closely related to that you shouldn't patronize people. Don't pity them. Work with them and make the world better, but don't patronize. And a thing that has grown over the years is don't design for diagnosis. You can't design for diagnosis. You can design for difficulties. You can design for that people find something difficult, but that's not the same as designing for diagnosis. So when someone says we are interested in developing an app for people with the ADHD, do you want to join? Then we sort of problematize that and said, why only those people? Because the problems that you might solve perhaps is way broader than that diagnose, and not everybody in that diagnose has the same problems anyway. So you can't design for a diagnose. Diagnoses are for medical stuff. We say do the right thing, even if the law said you mustn't do this, you should do it. So, and then we have this, think about participation and activity, and that will result in participation, and inclusion will be the end result of the things you do. Statistics was important, I said, and we have started a survey in Sweden called Swedes with Disabilities and the Internet, and that is a mirror survey of an ongoing, since long going on survey of the Swedish population on the Swedes and the Internet. But that kind of survey doesn't contain information and data about people with disabilities. So we're sort of mirroring that, and we have done it 2 times now. And we have worked with the survey questions and the methods of collecting data. So we actually found that we need at least 4 or 5 ways of collecting data to make the data collection process accessible. And the reason why you don't have people with impairments in population surveys is that it's a multifolded problem, because firstly, they probably will not be found in the samples. When you have sort of samples that you use in population research, then you don't get representation from people with disabilities. And then if you by chance happens to have them in your sample, then many of them maybe can't answer the question because they don't understand the questions, or the questionnaire is inaccessible, or so there isn't a way for them to participate in the survey, and that will result in them not taking the survey. So now we have data on this, and it's turned out to be perhaps the largest survey on this that we know of in the world, actually. And you will find the data. If you follow the link, you can sort of look at the data for yourself. But the result, we have divided our material into 21 impairments and 19 diagnoses, and then we have asked the question about participation. Do you think that you are sort of included in this society? And in every group we can see that yes, there are people saying that they can't participate in the digital society, but in the same group people say, I feel that I'm fully participating, and then you have a proportion saying I'm participate, but not that much, somewhat participating, and those are sort of the proportions is different in every study group. So you can't make an average out of this and say people with disabilities participate. That's also only an average figure, and you have to look at every group individually to understand what is going on in that group, and how to address the problems that the group sort of present. And in this research, our main question is it difficult to use the internet? And what do you do on the internet? And what do you feel about inclusion? And what kind of devices are you working with? And I will just show you some brief results here. You can read the whole report. We can see that without disability, 100% in our study has a smartphone, but only 79% of the young people up to 24 years have a smartphone. That's a significant difference. And growing up having a disability and not having a smartphone doesn't really help you to sort of educate yourself and get a job. I think it should be really, really hard to be a young person growing up without a smartphone in any Nordic country. We have this, I said before, with people that cannot identify themselves digitally. We have only 6% in the population without disability, and that was mostly elderly. We have 33% in our group with disabilities, and those are spread in all age groups. So it's not a sort of a problem related to only older people. Oh, this is how they feel included in the digital society. And 82% of Swedes feel included in the digital society. 62% in our data feel included. But if we divide it into subgroups, we have 30% of the blind participants that say they are fully participating in the digital society. 33% of people with intellectual disability, and 72% with people with ADHD. And that's a common pattern. People with that kind of diagnosis, they feel quite but not as included as the whole population, but they are closer to the whole population than other groups. If we summarize this on who struggles the most, we can see that it's a language, or mostly a language and intellectual problem. Those are the groups that have sort of struggles the most, the people with impairments related to language or intellectual capacity. Then we have the motor skills and vision, hearing, concentration, and mental illness. It's also people struggling, but not that much as the people with the language and intellectual disabilities. So the prerequisites then, what is the prerequisites? Well, I have identified 14 of them, and I won't go through all of them, but what I want to explain is that you need to address, when you sort of take action and want to work with inclusion, then you need to take action on several prerequisites at the same time, I think. So we have the issues with the devices and applications that we need, or access to the internet, or so, but maybe the problem isn't there. Maybe the problem is that I can't afford all this, I don't have the money, or I don't believe myself in being a successful user of this kind of technology, or I am not in a situation where I can sort of be trained and get support and have education on this. So if you don't have a job, for example, then you're out the sort of ecosystem of digital competence often. No one sort of feed you with new knowledge. You have no one to ask when you struggle or things like that. Or maybe we need to change the policy or the laws or the practices that are sort of involved. But the key thing to all this is accessible design. If we take that part away, then nothing of the else really matters. And that's also sort of implied by accessibility is sort of having a special place also in the convention, stressing that accessibility is the key here. If we don't have an accessible society, then the rest of this will sort of get useless or of less value. I will end with two practical examples that we are working with for the moment. This is the 1177, the national sort of healthcare portal in Sweden. And actually it's not, because it's a prototype of 1177. The actual current version is not accessible for people with cognitive impairments and not for other impairments as well. It struggles with accessibility. And we are in a research project where we redesign this service and make propositions of future change by presenting prototypes to the other stakeholders. So this is, when I show you the power relation picture earlier, the power in this process is user and designers working with this and not showing this to the other perspectives before we have sort of ended the prototype. And that's the stage we are in at the moment. So we are now entering a phase where we will have workshops presenting this vision for the policymakers and for the staff and from the technical perspective. So we have the idea in this research project is to flip the power relations and see what's happening. And we have actually a lot of interesting stuff in this prototype, meaning that the Swedish government has to change some laws actually to make this work. And this is DigiJag. That's a lifelong platform for people with intellectual disabilities. I said earlier that the school doesn't really provide for these people to be prepared to be digital citizens. And we are working with a project with adult people with intellectual disabilities and together create a platform that will work for them. So that's two examples of ongoing projects. I think I stop there and maybe we have some questions.
Yes. Is there any in the audience who have any questions? Otherwise, I have one, Stefan. You showed us a lot of guidelines to achieve the goal in this for the designer to design the universal design perspective for everybody. But is it any easy way for the designer to be aware of all these special needs, user needs? I think these guidelines you showed us was just parts of the knowledge you need as a designer.
Yeah.
And I guess the designer will like an easy way to get the knowledge. Can you see any way we can do that?
The easiest way I know of is to work with the people having the issues. And that's also a fun way of working, because then you as a designer become challenged. You get design challenges. Guidelines is often regarded as something that restricts a designer. So there is a conflict. That's actually a tension. When you say that you should follow these guidelines, designers think that that's a restriction on them. I want to be free in my design. So we have a struggle with having designers to read guidelines and to adapt them. So we say, work with the people that has the problem then you will realize what is difficult for them, and probably you won't need that many guidelines. So that could be a way of a more fun way of sort of addressing this problem.
Yes. So participation in the design is how you can do it easy, and you said it's become more fun. But there's a very large number of special user needs, and will it ever be possible to make design for all?
Probably not. That design for all is sort of a vision, and we always struggle to get as close to it as we can in a particular project. And that's also a tension in the design process, because design is aiming to produce something particular. We are building this application, we are building this website. It's a special thing with special sort of requirements, and at the same time we expect it to be universal. And that's the other end of the scale. You have particular stuff and you have universal stuff. So it is a conflict for a designer to sort of do the job on the particular issue or the particular project and making it universal. So we strive for it, but maybe we will not get there. There will always be someone that can't use it. But if you expand, if you think of those circles and you try to expand how many people could actually be using this thing, then you find that you restrict yourself too much in many design projects. You could have included many more people.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. I will hear the audience. If you have any questions, please use the chat, and I will bring it to Stefan. All right, I think we are going to have a short break. Well, maybe there is something here from Ulrika. Do you also cooperate with providers and organizations for elderly people?
Not that much yet, actually. We are discussing a project with one of the large organizations for the elderly at the moment, because they have looked at the DigiYard platform and found it useful for elderly. So I find that as an example of when you do something universally designed, other groups that you haven't had in mind specifically could actually find it useful. So we are trying to start a project where we can test that with elderly people, see that could they use the same platform. We think it could, but we haven't started that project yet.
Okay, and here another very interesting question. Do you have any kind of guidelines or checkpoints to avoid these toppling counterforces, or how to deal with them?
I don't actually have a guideline. I have this picture of and sort of the metaphor that they are there in your own process, and then you have to find them for your own. And they come up very different. They have different sorts of shapes and forms. So I haven't yet seen that it could be done as a guideline, because it's very sort of contextual. You have done something or you are doing something, and in that process you will find those toppling counterforces. But in the case of the homeless, it was the meetings that was the toppling counterforces. If you do something else, maybe it's a confusing design in a web page, or you have an inaccessible login function that you brought in from a third party. That could be. So you actually have to be very contextual and situated in your own problem. And then they are hard to change. I don't have a recipe on that. Change people and practices could be really hard.
Okay, thank you for a good answer. The last question for now. What is your experience with the collaboration between the designers and the users? Do the designers see this as an asset or a barrier?
I think when they realize how fun this is and how they become challenged on their home turf, they like it very, very much. But the procurement process doesn't always allow time for doing this collaboration. So that's when you sort of take the cheapest option and you procure something, then probably that option doesn't allow for a lot of collaboration between users and designers. But designers who are in this process, they tend to like it. That's my experience.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for a very interesting presentation.
Thank you.
We'll now have a short break. I think it's a 10-minute break, and we'll be back. So see you soon. Welcome back to the webinar. I hope you have got some coffee or a glass of water, and you're ready for the next approximately 30 minutes, where I will make a presentation for some perspective from the Danish the National Board of Social Services. I'll now try to show you my presentation. Okay, digital solutions in social welfare. Why is this important? Why is this topic important? I guess Stefan Johansson just gave us the answer, or a part of the answer. It's a very present way or present topic, and we need to be sure that we are doing the right thing for the people with disabilities. Okay, and who am I? My name is Max Peter Jensen, and I'm an educated technician and a special education teacher. And for now, I'm working as an area consultant in the National Board of Social Services in Denmark. My main area is assistive technology, and is welfare technology, as some of you from the Nordic country will know, and it's ICT and accessibility. I have been a co-author on an article which was published this year. It is an article, information and communication technology-based assistive technology to compensate for impaired cognition in everyday life. I will come back to that article later.
Hello, Max. Lars here. Could you please start your video?
Yes. I don't know why it's turned off when I do this. So, is it on now?
It's perfect, thank you.
And you're still seeing the presentation?
Yes, it's very good. Just put it in presentation mode.
Yes, I will do so. Well, I'll continue. Well, in Denmark, we have an agency for digitalization, and you can see the statement. We usually say that everyday life is digital, and it actually is, and it's unavoidable, as I said, to be in a digital society. So what is the main cause for people with disabilities to participate in this digital society? I think it's something about the way we are talking about the digital or the digitalization, but also a way to inspire each other and to exchange knowledge and exchange the view of digitalization. As a remark, I can say in Denmark it's mandatory to communicate with public sector through the service called Digital Post. I will come back to that. As you can see here, this is just a view on how is it possible to avoid being on the internet. Well, you can see how many devices in the world that is on the internet. And for my case, I have 4 devices here in my house. That's smartphone, that tablets, that desktop, and also smart TVs. And that's just for my own. And I have my wife, she has the same. And so for this householding, we have about 10 devices going on the internet. So it is obvious it's needed to be accessible because we have our individual needs. Also here in my house, we have individual needs. And we are personalizing our devices to use the way on the internet as we want. So as you see, there's a lot of devices connecting the internet, and a lot of the social services, the digital social services, use the internet the way as I showed you, the digital post or other kind of social services. So or public services. So is all the public services on the digital platform accessible for all? I don't think we are achieving the goal yet, but it's going the right direction. This is a map showing how the population or who have never been used the internet. And as you can see, the elderly people is among the most parts that not are using the internet. But I think there's also in between these data a lot of other kind of or other part of the population, the people with disabilities. But as you see, in a decade, we have more than half the percentage of people who use the internet in the area for the elderly from 65 to 89 years. It is increasing, and it's good. More and more are using the internet. More and more have got the opportunity to log in or to use the public service from a digital platform. Okay, what's in this data? Just to look at the digital post solution, you can see there's more than 4.5 million citizens to use it, and about 382,500 citizens who are not using the digital post. And is it then possible to get the same public service as everyone else if you're not a digital citizen or using the digital post? Well, there's exemptions for the digital post. And one of the first thing is if you have a disability that prevents you from receiving post digitally, then you can be exempted. So I think that's a part of this 7.8%. And I think it's the goal must be to make this a lower percentage. And I think we are on the right way. Okay, towards a digitized society. Well, as Stefan showed us, we have the accessibility in the legislation. And in Denmark, we have harmonized the EU directive, which is in the law on the accessibility of websites and mobile application of public sector bodies. It means that everyone should make their homepage or their digital solution on the internet accessible. And it's, as Stefan also showed us, the guideline, World Content Accessibility Guideline 2.1. That's the part you have to use when you're making your website accessible. We also have in Denmark a digital inclusion network. It's also the agency for digitalization in Denmark who runs the network, and it's a network with a lot of users, user organization, NGOs, politicians, and it's a huge network who focus on how can we make this public digital solutions inclusive for all. And when they are talking about how can we develop new solutions, it is a main point that the users are asked and are participating in the work. So this is the universal design principle. Is it possible to look at universal design principles when you're talking about digitalization or digital solutions, and when you're talking about the social services? But I guess the four principles: equitable use, flexibility in use, simple and intuitive use, perceptible information is the main issues when you are looking at a digital information system or digital solution. So this is a good sort of guideline to be aware of when you are making your digital solution, also when you are using the digitalization in the social services. As a point, it's necessary for someone, good for all. There will be no reason not to try to achieve this and to make the design process, make the design with the universal principle, universal design principle. So now going back to the ICT-based article where I was a co-author. We were making a review over what kind of ICT tools was being used and how is it used. As you can see, the main conclusion in the review is actually the same as Stefan said: use mainstream technology. It's an easy way, and if you're making your solution by using the mainstream technology, there is no stigma. And what kind of mainstream technology are we talking about? Well, everything that can go through the internet. Can be smartphone, tablets, PC, and PDAs, personal digital assistants, and things like that. It can be a smartwatch as well, but it's a technology who everyone are using. And some of these products or mainstream technology have included what we use as assistive technology. There's a calendar with reminders, prompting and audio signaling, text to speech, speech recognition, GPS, maps and camera. And then there's, of course, ways to add software and apps. And the software and apps can be dedicated for a certain disability or a certain impairment, or it can be just everyday apps. The main conclusion also said when you're using the mainstream technology, well, it's not stigmatization, it's not stigma. You're using the same as everyone else, and that is actually what the user wants. We will not be using the special kind of equipment or special device. But of course, there can be a need for special devices. As example, the Braille keyboard is used for communicating when you have a loss of sight or are vision impaired, or you're using the text to speak when you are so you need a microphone, or you need a good text-to-speech software so you can communicate with your voice only. Or you might need some buttons, you call it yes or no buttons, or no, 0 or 1 buttons. So you're making a scan over your device and choose your you choose your choice with the button. But it is still the same solution as everyone else are using. And as you saw before, we have it's in the law. It's in the law of web contents from the public sector must be accessible. So if you have a device that can can be used on the internet, then you have the opportunity to be a part of the digital solution. And just to be sure what we are talking about, how can this be used? Well, for the mainstream technology, you can see if you have any memory problems, of course, it is good to have a device which can give you some reminding, and it's in the software in the operative systems. Or it can be if you have problems with executing tasks independently, you can have this prompting software, or also prompts with this small signaling at a specific times. So what is the need to make this work? Well, as you see in the article, we found that the IC-based products should be individualized. And I guess all of you have a smartphone, and it is very individualized. You will become sort of naked if you lost your smartphone. It is set up in a way that you want to use it, and it is set up with the applications or the apps that you will use to get on the internet, or to use just the calendar functions, or whatever you were using your smartphone in a way. So it is important that the main stream product has an opportunity to be individualized, and mostly kind of mainstream technology today has that opportunity. So you can make it easy or intuitive to use, and also it is flexible to use. So it's also a way to see it that if you have to participate in the community, you will have to be living independently and to make your own choices, and to go on for achieving your goals and dreams as everyone else. And how can you do that? Well, if you make it with what I in the beginning called welfare technology, we can change the name to in living independently technology. If you're using that, it might be your choice how you will participate in community. So I think B and C is very important in Article 19 from the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. It is necessary that you can get the personal assistance to live and so independently as possible, and that is how you can be included in the community, and that is also how you can participate in the community. And C is maybe the main subject for the digitalization. The community services and facilities for the general population must be as available for everyone, and it must be based on equality, so people with disabilities can participate as everyone else. Living independently technology or using assistive technology or ICT technology in the social services is just to introduce and to use the same as you do in your own home. If you are living in an institution and you got your room, you will like to participate or to make your own choices and to live as independently as possible. And today the technology is more and more automatic. We have a lot of sensors in the technology, and we can call it home automation technology. So you can, as the picture shows, use as a device which can go to the internet or use the IP protocol to communicate with your devices or your services in your home. You can communicate through your device, and you can use the device to see or you can use the device to steer the lightning, the lights in your house, and how warm is it, and everyone is getting more and more automation in your home. So it will also be a way for people with disabilities to live independently in their home. But it makes some demands. And first of all, of course, the digital solution must be personalized. And what can it make for a requirement? Well, it's of course for the staff, if you are living in an institution or if you are living at home and the social care workers are coming to your home, you'll need to be as a social care worker aware of the core digital skills in social care. So that's, you need to have a knowledge of technology. Yes. And what is so the requirements for the citizen? The digital skills should be trained, and you should be trained in using the selected product. And if it is ever possible, then it must be a product that you are used to. So as Stefan said, it is quite strange to figure that a number of people with disabilities do not have a smartphone or do not have a tablet or do not have a digital device, so you can use the internet. It is not possible to be a digital citizen if you not have the knowledge, and if you're not if you do not have the skills to use the product or the device. So it's very important that the citizens are trained to use the selected product. And that's what is all the requirement for the technology or the designer process. There's something to be aware of here. It should possibly be an opportunity that the product or the device has an kind of individualization, so it's possible to customize or make it your own device. And individualized access aims to address basic needs and preferred preference of the user. That's also why it is important that the user are a part of the participation in the design process. Yeah. I have an example from Denmark where the user have been a part of the design process. We have a product called ScanHow, which is a application for your smartphone or for your tablet where you can use it with your camera. It's a small QR code, and in the picture you see this guy who wants to make coffee, but he do not quite know, or he cannot remember what is the right way to use this coffee machine. Then he can make he can take a picture of the QR code, and then he will come into maybe a video sequence that shows how to use this machine, or maybe a text sequence for what kind of steps. Steps one, you will make your choice on the coffee machine, find the button. Step two, press the button, and so on. So this is an example for technology made from well, it was a special education teacher and a pupil with autism that made this application, and it's used in a lot of institutions for people with cognitive disabilities, and it made the people more independent. So they do not need to ask the staff whole time, what am I supposed to do now? You can use this in every daily life matters, how to make the dinner, what to do when I brush my teeth, and so on. So this is a small application which do a lot difference for the people with cognitive disabilities. Yes, and it's actually in the beginning it was just the QR code and just the way of instructions and executive tasks which was shown, but now it's also as many things in technology. It's developed with the calendar, and it can gives you some reminders as well. So this is just both reminding and prompting the device or technology. The device is the mainstream technology. It's the smartphone. It is the tablet you can use. Another example is well, in this Corona time, we have the problems being together, and if you're a person with this from the Danish user organization for people with developmental disabilities, they have made this homepage with their users. They ask what is the problem. We cannot be together physical. Uh, how can we make it easy for you to be together with your friends in a digital way? So this is a Corona made COVID-19 made website for showing or give the inspiration to how we can be together in a distance, and it's made with the organization and the users. So it's a kind of guidelines, and it's a kind of inspiration. There's some common applications in this, such as FaceTime and Skype, and there is also the guides on how you can use it and what to be aware of. Stefan told something about ethics, and there is an ethics issue in doing using this kind of application, but it must not prevent us to use it. So it's good to inform and bring on the knowledge and inspiration on how to use it and how to use it the right way. So this is another example. Well, what's the trend? It's already there. You can see there's sensor technology, smart home technology, Internet of Things, RFID, which is a radio frequency identification, and near field communication. And the near field communication is now brought into our smartphones. That's why you can use your smartphone or your smartwatch as payment when you're doing the contactless payment in the store. We have a lot of sensor technology. In the right, there's an example with the intelligent refrigerator, which can tell me what I have in my refrigerator and when do I need to buy the milk, or is it getting too old, and so on. So you can have a lot of intelligent normal stuff as refrigerator, TV, your warming supplier or electronic supplying and lights, and you can remote control it with your smartphone or your mainstream technology device through the internet. There's also robots, using robots as social robots or communication robots. It's for some people with cognitive disabilities can be the way of to communicate if you're communicating through a robot. But also here there is some ethical issues that need to be aware of. But I think this all these trends is what we are seeing now and what we will be seeing more of in future, such as artificial intelligence as well. I will end my presentation with an example from the world called virtual reality. As you see here, in Rødovre municipality and Aalborg University have made a project, find out could we use virtual reality to train in daily living skills, and they made some videos from the store in the neighborhood, and then they made a virtual of the store, and then they was training with the virtual reality, and it actually was a way to train to go out in reality, to go to the real shopping store and not be afraid of being in a big place with many people. So this was a project who's shown that you can use this tools in virtual reality to train in daily living skills. This was just an example. Go to the store and go to the shopping store and try first virtually, and then afterwards try it in real life. It was a good experience. So the last is well, the future. You can't imagine. You can see here. I guess not. We will have a flying car, but we have maybe in a few moments a driverless car. maybe we have the cashless society, and the digital solutions are increasing, and we are developing new solution every day, and the technology is really in a developing mode. This was my presentation, and I think the time is nearly up, so I will go back to the room and ask if there is any questions. I can't see if there are any questions. Oh, do you think that Denmark's approach sets focus on the digital divide from a government and authority perspective? And have you seen any response from the market? Have you seen more universal design in ICT products? Well, I think there's a it's a good question. The government perspective is to make it regulated by legislation, and they want to make it more accessible. But it's also difficult to, as Stefan said, it's also difficult to use all the universal principles and get the design for all, but for more and more. I think we are heading that way. We might not yet achieve the goal, but I think the government is trying to make the products or the digital solution as accessible as possible. And the market is quite different, because a lot of designers think they will design it for a main target group and not for everyone. So that's a mindset we have to change in the market and in the development area, such as the designers. Well, I can see the time is running, and it's 12:02. We will now have a short break, and then we will be back about 12:30. So see you 12:30. I will start to give the word to Lasse for a short introduction.
Hello, everybody. You are about, after this session, go into so-called breakout rooms. When you do so, I would like you to rename yourself after the group you belong to. The groups are A, B, C, and D. And therefore, I need you to do this. I will show you so you can understand what I'm doing. In each and every window, you will see 3 dots, which means more. And here you can rename yourself. Please do so and put your letter first. So for the group A, you put A colon and then your first and second name. And the same for group B, B colon and your first and second name, and C and D and so forth. And I'm sure Nina will put up the picture so you know which group you belong to, unless you already know that. And that will happen just before the next break. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will have some short examples from the other countries, Nordic countries. We will start with Finland in a moment, and afterwards we will have an example from Norway. But now I'll give the word to Susanna and Helmi.
So, hello everyone and greetings from Finland. My name is Susanna Sarvo and I am the project manager of the project called Go Digital, and it is founded by ASPA Foundation in Finland. And today we're going to represent you the tool for evaluating the accessibility of the public digital courses. And in this context, we mean courses held physically in rooms where you can learn digital skills, not the virtual courses.
Hello, Susanna. Lars here. Is it possible for you to turn on your video?
So when Susanna trying to get video working, so it's maybe my turn. I'm Helmi Kallio and working in same project, and there I work in project worker. And now next slide, please. Yeah. First, a little bit about ASPA Foundation and ASPA services. We promote the equality and the complete social inclusion of people with disabilities and people recovering from mental health problems. So ASPA Foundation offer apartments and ASPA services offer housing services. So in our developing projects, we promote our residents' independent living and full inclusion, such as digital inclusion, like our project is. So next slide. Yes, and Code Digital project is in a nationwide here in Finland, and we strengthen the abilities of our client to use digital services. And in our project, we promote the equality of our clients by providing them with peer support for digital learning. And those pairs we called DigiCompis. We are also developed the tool of evaluation accessibility of public digital courses. We have two targets. First, helping our clients to include of digital courses like in libraries and worker colleges. And second, we want to helping public services offer more accessibility digital courses. And yes, next slide. So in our project, we take care need of individual and society. So then to the tool, we called it Sakke, and it's tool for evaluating the accessibility of public digital courses. This tool based on my master's degree thesis, which name is a program theory for evaluation of the accessibility of public digital education services. And there is also the link where you can go to read abstracts if you want. Accessibility in this thesis is discussed from the perspective of laws and regulation, human and fundamental rights, social responsibility, and basic psychological needs. And it's part of evaluation receipts. And next slide, please. So whole material, this thesis was collected through team interviews and co-development workshops. And there was clients of public digital courses, experts of digital education field. There was experts of the accessibility and people with disabilities. So the tool is designed to evaluate mental, physical, and social accessibility of digital courses, not only technical accessibility. It's designed to evaluate mental, physical, and social accessibility. So whole digital course process from the beginning to the end. So the idea is that, for example, libraries and worker colleges don't have to plan any special group. Everyone could attend all courses, and then you don't need any special group courses at all. So The tool contains 8 topics of evaluation, and now Susanna will tell you more about that.
Thank you, Helmi. Do you hear me? Because my screen is froze.
Yes.
So I will do the presentation with my own slides here, so I can do it without seeing anything. But please, the next slide with the blue dots there. Thank you. So here you can see the topics of this tool that we created, and this tool actually will be published this autumn in Finland, and it's in Finnish, and later on this year we hope it's going to be also in Swedish, and it will be a PDF version in Swedish on our website. These 8 topics you see here, you can use this tool by using 1, 2, or all of these topics to evaluate the accessibility of digital courses. And here you see the first one is the course discovery and marketing the course. The second is easy language and the right kind of information. Then the third, enrollment process of the course. The fourth one is actual arrival to the course. Fifth is atmosphere of the course. Sixth, accessibility of the teaching. And the seventh, accessibility of the course materials. And the last one is the eighth one is the opportunities after the course. So next, please. Yeah, so here you see an example of this tool, the questions. You can use this tool like doing the evaluation now and probably like in 3 months, 6 months, whatever you like after. And then you can compare the accessibility points, so-called, if your accessibility of the course has actually improved on that time. Every topic of this 8 topic has about 5 to 10 questions, and here we translated a couple for you. And you can also calculate the points in all the topics, each topics, or all the topics together. And as you see here, you get points from yes answer, 1 point. And then each question has on this online version, they have an information button. And if you click that, you will get more information about this question and what it actually means. Like you see here in question 2 and an example, what is a accessibility information? And you can learn more about these topics if you have not that much of information of it. Thank you. The next slide, please. So here are the examples of those 8 topics, and you see questions here, but I will give you more examples of our own. So first one, the course discovery and marketing. For example, for some people with no digital skills, it's impossible to find the course if it's only marketed online. So, for example, some people with no digital skills, it's maybe better to advertise in a local newspaper so they can find it there. The second, easy language and the right kind of information. Easy language is not only benefiting people with disabilities, but also immigrants and, for example, people with dyslexia. And even in Finland, from 5.5 million people, 700,000 would actually benefit from easy language. The third, the enrollment process. Some clients told us that for them signing up course was only possible by phone. But by the time they reached someone at the office of the school, the course was already full. So phone enrollment and online one are not equal because people who sign up online are much faster. So that's, for example, one point to be taken care of. The fourth, arrival to the course. For example, if I would suffer from an anxiety from social situation or gatherings, it would be important for me to know advance how to locate a place or how it actually looks like, for example, a picture of the building. The next slide, please. So the fifth is the atmosphere of the course. So we can talk about also kind of attitudes. And unfortunately, even in the 2020, we still have attitude problems towards disabled people. And according to this research behind this tool that Helmi Kallio made, clients told that even if everything else is okay with accessibility, but attitude of the personnel or staff isn't, they will never return to this course. So it's very vital, this attitude, what you make, and the atmosphere in the course. The sixth, the accessibility of teaching. Here's an example that a lot of people would benefit from slower teaching tempo, from seniors to people with learning problems. So a lot of beginners anyway. So this is also a very important topic to evaluate. The accessibility of the course materials. Here are maybe the most technical parts that you can also check the materials as a teacher, if they are technically accessible or are they diverse to utilize to different kind of learners.
2 minutes left.
Yes, thank you. And the eighth one is the opportunities after the course. So where I can learn more, it's probably the main thing here. So next slide, please. Here we have the partners of our project, 8 partners. One is also a special school, and the funding is coming from the Center for Social Welfare and Organizations. And if you leave the next slide here, then you can see our contact details, because we don't have a website on English or Swedish. So if you would change the slide, please contact us directly through email if you want to learn more after this webinar. That's probably all for us now. Thank you. And questions, please.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Susanna and Helmi. There's a short opportunity to a question if anyone have one. Otherwise, we will go on with the Norway, and I will introduce Rita Hellman, PhD from the organization CARTA, and she will make a presentation with a Norwegian example.
Hello, everybody. I would now like to try to share my screen with you. Can you see it?
Yes, we can see your screen, but we can also see the next picture. So carry on, please.
Should I just carry on? I just have to change the mode, I think.
Yes.
And I'm trying to find it.
You might using 2 screens.
Yes. Well, let's go. It doesn't matter. Please just look at the big one. I don't find the option just now.
It's okay, go on.
Yes, this is about e-learning for people with intellectual disability and the Norwegian case. And I come from a very small company, Karde AS, in Oslo, and we have since 2004 been working with ICT-related services and topics otherwise within public sector ICTs, e-health, and a lot with assistive technologies for people with cognitive disabilities, and under there, people with dementia or memory problems, and most of all, people with intellectual disability. And we have been working both with nationally and internationally, and From the international project, I would perhaps mention the AAL program from the European Union. From there, we have mainly projects for elderly people and seniors, and the e-learning projects that I'm going to talk about today, they are mainly Norwegian funded. And then I just switch to the next one, which you already saw a little bit about. The philosophy in our projects for the e-learning and people with intellectual disability is divided in 4 main ideas, so to say. We want to work with inclusion of them, to enable them to participate in the society, to live an autonomous life. It has been mentioned today that people with disabilities need to live independently. This is the same thing, just in other words. Making own choices, that has also been mentioned today. And finally, mastering everyday tasks and activities, which is very, very important also for being independent and have an autonomous life. The domains that we have in our e-learning effort are shown in this roulette picture. And there is a coding also, where I try to illustrate what is there already and what's in progress and what's on the drawing board. And there is quite a lot e-learning already existing in CARDE's portfolio. So society and democracy, working life, personal hygiene, nutrition and physical activity, weight control, are examples of this, and digital competency, which is part of perhaps today's topics, is under construction, and also living in one's own home and personal economy. All these topics in our understanding are essential to be an individual independent person and being able to have an autonomy in everyday life. Our background to creating this is based on both own experiences, caregiver insights into the lives of people with intellectual disability and dementia. In other words, we are family carers, many of us working in the company. We also are researchers, many of us, so that we have a researcher background. And then also, of course, the networks that we participate in bring into onto our hands a lot of practical knowledge about the needs of people with intellectual disability. The e-learning applications that I will show you some examples of, they are meant both for working places, homes with parents, homes with professional caregivers, schools, and even day centers and activity centers, although all for people with intellectual disability or for them. The principles that we use when we build the e-learning applications are mentioned, the most important principles on this slide. We use quite a lot of energy to make the content in the e-learning applications very thematically divided so that it's easy to understand. We use quite a lot of resources to make the text content really easy to read. And that's a great effort sometimes, because it's very difficult to write a short story and tell everything in a clear manner, as you know. We try to use multimedia content for different learning styles: text, pictograms, speech, photos, picture carousels, just like slideshows, which may have a speech on recorded, films, cartoons, quizzes, and so on, to try to make content that is useful for the many diverse persons in our target group. We also have started to make super easy versions for non-readers, for example, those people who really cannot read or are very weak readers. And we create materials for helpers supporting people. It might be teachers, parents, service providers who work with them, and so on. we are working very hard to create a certain family resemblance between the different applications, so that if we are learning something about personal hygiene, the same techniques and methods and organization of the content resembles of that, for example, in the democracy app. And finally, we also create the e-learning applications with responsive design, which the picture also shows you. These can be used both on smartphones, tablets, and the more traditional PCs or Macs. Then we jump on to the next one. And these are examples, just screenshots or small pictures of parts of the user interfaces, so that you get an idea what I'm talking about. The left one here is the main menu of the personal hygiene, which was launched just last year. We are talking about how to wash your hands, showering, taking care of your teeth, hair, clean clothes, how to eat properly. A little bit of something also for the girls or the boys, without going into detail, but they are quite detailed also for the gender stuff. The next one on the right-hand side is a small quiz from the rights and duties of people in the Norwegian society, communicated in a very easy manner, and then ask questions about this as a quiz. That was about the rights, hygiene topic and the rights of the persons in the society. Then we have e-learning about working life, and on the right-hand side you can see some examples of that. It includes everything about tacit knowledge rules in the working life, how to be polite to each other, how to say hello, how not to say hello in working life, talking and disturbing meetings when people participate in ordinary working place meetings, and so on and so on. And here then you got also another example of the personal hygiene, where I show how we organize the stuff. It's a lot about easy text, then there is the sound. It's being read in normal, not synthetic speech, but normal speech. We read it carefully in everything that's in there, and we have these films and pictures. This is the main organization of stuff in almost all our products within e-learning. We also have the democracy and participation application made for the municipality. New version, I hope, because then we have the Stortinget elections, parliament elections in Norway. And this is an application where we have made very easy to read parts. We also have the sign language part and a pictogram part, so that we try to provide information about participation in politics and elections easy for these target groups. And here we also talk about democracy and about the political parties of Norway, what they think and mean and want. Very difficult, because everybody wants to be perfect parties for everybody, but we have tried to make it understandable as well as it just can, and how to participate in the elections, really physical, what to do. And even a couple more examples from the user interfaces of the democracy application. Again, speech, pictures, pictograms, illustrations, and a little more detailed picture of one of the persons who made the sign language for us about everything of this content. And a little bit more to applications that are just soon finalized or in the prototype mode. Domoteus, which is about being able to live in one's own home, all kinds of daily activities, how you do it, how you wash the toilet, how you wash your clothes, how to clean the home, what if something breaks down, the lights, the temperatures, and what kind of things you should perhaps have in your medicine closets, and so on and so on. And then also this very important part, which is called Ja, vi kan, yes, we can. You get perhaps associations to Barack Obama, who said, yes, we can, and this is also our inspiration. But it's about digitalization and digital services as such. We want to learn them, our primary users, about how to travel, how to buy tickets to the movies, how to order ours, who's any kind of service providers on the net, how to operate the self-service checkouts in shops, how to use the mobile phone as a helper. We heard about this earlier today, all the useful applications that we have in every smartphone already. And then also how to learn more stuff by YouTube.
2 minutes left.
Yes, I know. And this is the final example, which is about money and me, pengar och mig, about personal economy, how to save, how to not to be cheated on the net, and so on. Very important, because very many people have their own authorization to use their money, but they should learn how to do it sensibly. This address here is about the services that I showed you. You can go to kade.no, produkter, e-læring, and there you will find all these, and you can just use them for free, although it's not in other languages than in Norwegian, but there it is, everything. We include our users in several ways. We use focus groups, personal interviews, and surveys to find about the requirements. And then the testing phase is also together with the target groups in individual walkthroughs, and then also different kind of follow-ups. So we involve the users from beginning to end. Then last but not least, our financing bodies. These are the Norwegian collaborators who we have from the financing side, very often the Stiftelsen Dam and the end user organizations that we work together with, NFU, NNDS, and Peder Moset Folk High School. Very important, so we never work alone. And this is my contact information. Please mail if you have something you want to ask. And finally, if you have some project where you would like to have us with you, then take contact. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. I will ask the audience if there are any question, both to this presentation from Rita from Kade in Norway, or to Susanna or Helmi from the ASPA in Finland. Are there any questions? I have one. To both of you, you say you are having the users to participate in your solutions. How do you do that? Are you inviting a big part of or a severe part of the population or the users to participate developing your solution, or is it small groups, or is it individuals you're talking with?
May I start?
Yes.
We do it in very many different ways. We have these organizations that you saw on the last slide, associations for people with intellectual disability, or associations for particular disabilities such as Down syndrome associations. We announce it on our websites, we and our collaborators, and also on the Facebook. And then we get into contact, and then we arranged physical small meetings, for example, very small and carefully managed and organized focus groups with helpers and a couple of primary end users, or we do individual interviews. But also very often in these projects, we have sent out a thematic questionnaire where we just sketch which types of themes we would think it could be covered, and then very, very many caregivers, parents or teachers or service providers, they answer the questions and tell what they think is important. Yes.
Thank you. And And Susanna or Helmi, are you doing in a similar way, or how do you?
Our tool, this accessibility evaluation tool, it's not ready yet. It's ready end of this year. So I think that we have asked, for example, from libraries and worker colleges help and comments about our tool, and now we have developed it a little bit more, and it will be ready end of this year.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.